What's up, guys? This is Lewis, and I'm your co-host. You've tuned in to Counterculture Podcast. I want to thank you for joining us today. Hope this inspires you and gives you a perspective about your purpose. Enjoy the episode.
You know, what's interesting is that, we've been having this podcast going on since February. Whether or not, we've been publishing any content or so, we appreciate the support. We appreciate the love, whether via Instagram, public. True story, actually. I was actually at church in Hillsong, LA at downtown of Los Angeles. And this girl comes up to me and she says, "You're Anthony Rivera and you have a podcast, right?" And, it was just awesome to see that there's that recognition from people to be able to see our work and just what we've been publishing. So we just appreciate everything that you guys are doing, every ounce of support, whether it's sharing, liking, giving a review, giving a comment, sharing with friends within your social circles. We just appreciate you guys, and we're excited about this new season.
And not only are we excited about this new season, Anthony, but we're just trying to do something different. We're trying to switch up, as in like the style that we're doing, so we can reach you guys on a more personal standpoint. But if you can, Anthony, just let us know, like, what's our reasoning for season 3? What's behind what we're doing this season?
Yeah, so since, our last season, one of the biggest things that kind of was a shift within my own mind is that I started working with the Department of Mental Health. So I've been working with a lot of young, aspiring, just people that are in the professional realm. And so with that, I've been able to find so many people that have this lifestyle that they've decided to follow, and I just find that so many people are living lives without a purpose that drives them. So I ended up shooting a text over to Lewis and letting him know that this idea of finding your purpose and giving practical tools to help maneuver through life with a purpose is one of the things that I wanted to focus on in this season. And one of those things that I want to provide to our listeners is by giving them the availability to hear from some of the most influential people within our own very lives. So just various types of leaders to be able to be on our show, to be on our podcast, and to be able to just implement some of the skill sets, leadership activities that they've been able to implement in their lives in order to become successful. And so, ultimately we're excited about this because we know not only are we passionate about people finding their vision, but we know God is as well. The Word of God says, "For a man that doesn't have a vision for his life will perish."
Just because sometimes you feel like you don't have a vision for your life doesn't mean that you don't have one. I mean, you may be in a time where you're just like, nothing's going right. What am I doing on this earth? Like, how can I find my purpose? But that's what we've created this season for, so we could teach you how to use the tools that you were given to fulfill your purpose, to discover your purpose.
Yeah, I think about my own life and just how things kind of fell into place. Nothing actually happened by accident, but everything was very strategic. And so
nothing coincidental.
Yeah, nothing was ever coincidence. Everything was always strategic. And so the only way you're ever going to implement change in your life is if you implement change. There's nobody else that's going to make it happen for you. Sure, we can pray to God, we can ask God to make a way, but unless we first even seek Him, even that in itself is a strategy. And even for myself, I remember being, at the age of 15 years old and always feeling this sense of an urgency to a calling or so to ministry. And I think it was in the places where I was most alone with God, when I was in my room, when I was at the altar. Many of you are like, "What's an altar?" It's this thing in church that pretty much, you go to pray or whatever the case may be. But, I was always, at an altar or in my bedroom seeking God. And it was in those moments in isolation where God was actually able to develop something inside of me, giving me a clear vision. Because I think a lot of us, what happens is we hear so many different distractions, so many different voices. And as millennials, a lot of times we're very consumeristic. And so we can easily fall into the trap of, wanting someone else's life, or that sounds good, or that
I think
looks
social
good.
media has done that to us too, though.
Completely.
That's why, as you're mentioning, the culture
it's
has done
easy.
that to us.
It's easy to just get on your explore page and see, hey, look, modeling looks like a great idea right now, or being a technician, or being something. And I think there's so many different voices that kind of draw us into these lifestyles that we really aren't fond of. They're these lifestyles that we really don't even want to do. And so I think for myself, being able to get away from the voices, being able to get away from the distractions and seek God. For me, God was able to give birth to a vision in my own life that led me to a life of ministry, a life of preaching the gospel, a life of teaching, a life of discipline. But for you, he could be calling you to a life of business. He can be calling you to a life of politics. He can be calling you to whatever it is that you feel that he's completely putting on your heart. But the key is not, what you feel. The key is when you isolate yourself from every distraction and you can completely get the insight of what God is completely trying to lay in on your heart. Because for myself, like I said, it was in the moments when I isolated that God was able to give me clarity. He was able to give me confirmation. He was able to reveal what his true sense and heart for me was. And I think it was through that everything fell into place. It wasn't just that God laid down a map for me. He didn't just lay down footprints in where I should take, but it was through that vision, that clarity, that I knew what I was called to. Therefore, I knew all the steps that I should be taking. So whether that was enrolling myself into college, taking coursework for theology, attending seminars, finding mentors, being able to volunteer for local churches, being able to put on events. There's different strategies that I was able to take throughout my life and being able to get me closer to the vision that God is still taking me to. And I think it's never an ending journey. I mean, rest in peace to Nipsey, but the marathon, it always continues. It's always a struggle. It's always going to be a game. We're always pursuing something bigger than ourselves. And the moment you're not pursuing something larger than yourself, you're actually not even living a big life. You're not even living a life that God called you to. Because sometimes I think we get into these mindsets where we want to think that, we're going to achieve this big, grander scheme of a goal. But a lot of times, if you can achieve that goal on your own, realistically, you're not even allowing God to even implement his own power in your life, because we need to stop laying the foundation for, what we can accomplish, but more so what can God accomplish through us. And those are just some of the things that I feel that for me, they've been influential for me. It's just that private time where I'm able to close out distractions. And it's through that clarity, through that confirmation, that I've been able to find just different avenues and strategies to be able to take in order to get me closer to that vision.
I think it's cool. I'm going to revert back to the first thing that you said was, essentially the question that we're asking, is how do we discover our purpose? And I think the first thing that you said was change. Is no one's going to change anything but us. I mean, one of the most important things that one of my mentors just told me a couple weeks ago was like, sure, you could ask God to take it away if it's hindering your growth, if it's hindering your walk, but is God really going to do that? God, sure, he can. That's great if God's going to perform that miracle in your life, just to, pull that cancer out of your life, pull that girl out of your life who's, breaking your marriage apart, pull that anything out of your life. But I think he wants you to do it. He wants you to take that step. So it's showing that you're willing to take that step and change to move forward into fulfilling your purpose. And I think that's one of the ways that we can fulfill our purpose, is eliminating distractions, as you mentioned, to eliminating any kind of outside noise. Just look at it as in, like, you're at the just perfect metaphor. Almost 80% of the people in this world work out now, probably. I don't. But the point is that when you go to the gym, you put headphones on, don't you? Don't you put headphones on, Anthony? I'm sure whoever's listening to it, you guys put headphones on. You guys probably won't even work out because you don't put headphones on, because those headphones eliminate those distractions, because you went to the gym for one simple purpose, was to get stronger. Now use any of that quiet time, as Anthony mentioned, the altar. That altar doesn't have to be at the feet of the pulpit at local church, wherever you go. It could be in your closet. It could be in your car. It could be anywhere where you're able to isolate yourself to get closer to God, so that outside noise doesn't interfere. The moment that the outside noise interferes with God, I think that kind of separates you from your purpose. And as we were mentioning, I think that's one of the tools that we can use to move forward to fulfilling our purpose, is just minimizing noise.
Yeah, and I want to say this to our listeners that may not even affiliate with some sort of religion or so. I think a lot of times it's easy to hit a wall with your development in life, and a lot of times you might be even listening to this saying, I don't even have a purpose. I don't even have a clear vision of what my purpose is. I don't see exactly how isolation is going to make this any better. What I want to say is that a lot of times, if you don't have higher goals for yourself, maybe you should try reaching for a higher power. Because maybe if you're able to elevate your vision of what your life should look like, you'll elevate the status of your goals. See, because if you can elevate the vision of what you can see for your own life, it's going to completely change the trajectory of what your life will look like.
And if you're able to change the trajectory of what your life looks like, I think that's a discipline that we can use to move toward our purpose. Some of the disciplines that I use is prayer, is quiet time. It's, even though we reiterated that, it's just I'm disciplining myself to eliminate the distractions. Whatever distractions are, close to you, whether it be your work, whether it be even family, sometimes those can be distractions. But let's be real. I think some of the most distractions in our life is our phone, our social media. Can we discipline ourselves better to eliminate those things so we can move forward in our life to fulfill our purpose, to fulfill our calling? Read. Discipline yourself to read. Discipline yourself to set time in your day to fill your mind and feel your mind too.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest downfalls on us in our society is that we have our focus in on so many things, and so a lot of times discipline is one of the hardest things to really give ourselves, especially when we have a identity and philosophy that majority of millennials follow, with trying to be our best self. And I think one of the things is that a lot of times an empty schedule can lead to a confused life. And so one of the biggest things that I would say is that for myself, a lot of that time that I had emptiness in, whether it was just free time, I never was huge on Netflix, and I never was really big on social media. And so a lot of my time I spent reading books, and I started challenging myself. It was actually last year where I decided to take a challenge and read 2 books every month. I know not everyone can do that, but realistically, that was just something that I was able to discipline myself to. And so by the end of the year, I was able to accomplish reading over 24 books for the entire year of 2018. And I'm still doing this practice as I'm telling this story. And I just think that reading, listening to podcasts, getting that information, getting something inside of you from other people, getting that insight. A lot of people like to stress the idea of mentors, but I like to say my mentors aren't always those that are just the closest to me, but my mentors are those that are even before me. And so some of those mentors are like Timothy Keller. Timothy Keller, he's a famous author. He lives in New York. But why is he my mentor? Because he's someone that I constantly am seeking out guidance from. Who else? John Mark Comer. John Mark Comer is one of the guys that I always read his stuff. I listen to his stuff. See, it doesn't matter about proximity, but it's always going to matter about how much you're getting into it. So that means that if you want to be mentored by some of the greats, just listen to their work. Just take a moment every day and just listen to some of their talks. Listen to some of their radio shows that they might have, their podcasts, their articles, their blogs. Just start to listen and get feedback into some of those people that you admire.
So you're saying for Anthony, one of the ways you discipline yourself is not only creating space, but fulfilling that space with things that are going to fill your mind and help you grow. Because even for yourself, like you just said, like you read, you listen to podcasts, you listen to some mentors of yours. honestly, I think that's a good start for some people. I think that's probably the best start. If you don't have time to read, it's okay. I mean, I don't have time to read all the time, but I'll sit at work at my desk and I'll throw a podcast on. I'll throw some motivational speaking on. But I'll use that time that I have, that space, to fuel my brain so I can move forward in fulfilling my purpose. But I feel like some of the bigger obstacles that we face in fulfilling my purpose. But I feel like one of the biggest obstacles, not only that I face, but we all face in our life, is busyness. We get busy. We wake up. We get the kids ready. If you have kids, we get ready ourselves. We eat breakfast if we have time for it because we're busy. We're going to work. We're trying to fight through traffic to get to work on time. We're working. We get off of work. We go home. We eat. We spend time with our family. But in that time, where do we find that empty space that we're talking about to, fulfill our purpose? How can we eliminate some of the busyness in our life?
Yeah, a lot of times for me, I find that I quit listening to music. And I know when people jump into my car, they think I'm a joke because I don't have a playlist. But, one thing is that I'll always listen to podcasts during my 30-minute drives, even 15 minutes. I can cut them off. Even if I'm in the grocery store, I'll listen to a podcast. I feel like you always have time to learn. You just have to be very strategic with how you want to, implement that, or whether you're just taking a walk or whatever you're doing. Use your 30-minute lunch for a reading article. Allow your mind to get away from the work environment and allow yourself to focus in on your true purpose. And I think that's one of the things, is that a lot of times we allow all of our different aspects of our lives to just bleed into each other. And it's hard because whenever your life's constantly just overflowing, you're never going to find a true moment where you can focus on the bigger picture. And so it takes you in a place where you can isolate yourself, you can separate yourself, you can look above the circumstances, where you can understand that, look, I have a bigger picture for my life, I have a vision for my life, I have a purpose for my life, and this current circumstance doesn't dictate the entire perplexity of my entire life. And I just think that this is something that's so prevalent within our culture, because a lot of times we're very circumstantial and we don't really look at everything that's going to happen, how my actions are going to impact tomorrow. We like to think of today, but that only today is going to only last you 24 hours. And 24 hours is probably 1% of your entire life. And so just remember that everything that you do today, it is going to impact tomorrow. It's going to impact your life forever. And so it's time to be strategic with your life. It's time to be strategic with your actions. It's time to be strategic with the way you decide to go about with utilizing your time. Because if you want to change your tomorrow, you have to first change your today. It's why a lot of times when we do face those, obstacles in our life with pursuing some sort of purpose, it can be difficult. It will be difficult. A lot of times the biggest distractor in our culture can be social media. Not because social media is bad, not because I hate it, not because I'm this person that's just completely against any cultural relevancy, but honestly, when you really think about it, when you're on social media, one of the biggest distractors from your own goals, from your own purpose, from your own life, is that you begin to do something that we all do, which is compare. They have this, they have that, and I want it, right? There's this comparison within our own minds that completely just destroys our confidence. It destroys our personalities. It destroys our authenticity. And what it does is it actually limits ourselves from seeing any true growth. But what I always tell people when they face this issue with distraction of, comparison, is that you never happened. And so you're a person that has completely never happened, nor will ever happen on the face of this earth. There's an authenticity behind you that nobody can ever tame. The timeline that you're in your life will never happen again. So that's why it's ironic when people like to tell me, well, this person, this leader, this figure in my life did it at the age of 25. Well, that's great for them. That was their timeline. You have a different timeline that nobody will ever have. So if you have it at the age of 36, that's great, because no one will ever get to do it the way you did it. And so that's the importance, is that we're able to embrace the fact that We as humans, our individualistic selves will never happen. God created you and myself with a certain timeline, with a certain time frame, but the only way we're going to be able to live life to the fullest isn't if we live our best self, but if we embrace the timeline, if we embrace who we are, we embrace our gifts, and we completely own that. It might happen in 15 years for you. It might happen tomorrow. It might happen in 20 years. But it doesn't matter when it's going to happen. It just matters that you're the one that it's going to happen for and to, because God entrusted you with whatever it is that you have, whether it's a skill, whether it's a family, whether it's children, whatever it is. It's just God has completely endorsed you with whatever he's going to provide for you. And it's your time just to own that timeline, because you will never happen again, nor have you ever. And just own your timeline. Own that time frame and just embrace it, follow it, work through it, and just that's all you can really do at this point.
I think that word that you use, timeline, it really stands out to me as you're talking, because it's essentially, I'm looking at it as a 24-hour perspective, is fulfilling that timeline with the mindset of, okay, what I'm getting ready to do, it probably isn't going to benefit my purpose. The Christian word that we use is discernment, but the definition of it is an understanding. As Anthony was saying, that there is some toxic situations in our life that we need to have an understanding of. This is not going to be beneficial for my life. It's not going to help me fulfill my purpose. So as we wrap up that intro to season 3, Anthony and I want you guys to ask yourself this question. If you guys have to write it down and put it on your desk or type it on your phone in a note, do it, because it's a pretty important question. What are some obstacles that are stopping you from discovering your purpose?
Good question, Lewis. That's a good one. That's I think you guys need to really just write that down. Maybe think about it over the week. It doesn't need to be something that you can always just jot down as you're hearing this. There's different things that might pop up throughout the week where you're realizing, wow, that is a distractor.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed the podcast, hit subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and tag us. For more content, please visit our website at counterculturepod.com.